Hello friends, let's continue to follow what's happening in Polish society. We have a lot of news. These are the Law and Justice Party's initiatives regarding the deportation of Ukrainians. This is legal chaos around the European Union's directives. Let's talk a bit about Romania, about Germany, about temporary protection, and the latest presidential laws in Poland signed by the legendary Karl Nawrocki. We'll discuss everything now. Please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and check your notifications. Friends, huge thanks to everyone who supports the channel. Now let's get down to business. The Polish opposition party PIS has put forward a remarkable initiative to deport unemployed Ukrainians of conscription age from the country. Deputy Andrzej Śliwko passionately defends this idea on Polsat News, stating that even if only 5% are unemployed, that's a whole brigade, if not a division, that could be formed and sent to fight for their homeland. Well, let's break down this whole mechanism. What does it mean? Is it about caring for our neighbors, right? It seems to me this is just pre-election populism. On one hand, the Polish politician argues for this noble assistance to Kyiv. Write in the comments, friends, what do you think? Should Ukrainians be deported? Especially those who are unemployed and living on welfare. They came up with this. Or should they not be deported? Yes, that's right. And the Polish politician says, my God, we're helping you. How can you not understand? Well, indeed, the shortage of soldiers at the front is a harsh fact, and the mobilization pool is essential. But on the other hand, who exactly will be catching people? And with a straight face, the deputy replies, that's what the Polish authorities are for. So instead of a systematic economic policy, he suggests assigning the police the function of conducting raids. And the journalist directly asks, what about unemployed Georgians or Germans? Śliwko gets embarrassed and avoids the question, rambling about context and fighting banditry. But let's look deeper into mass psychology, mass consciousness, and the politicians themselves. By the way, please write in the comments where this desperate, almost neurotic desire to send neighbors to the front en masse comes from in Polish society. In my opinion, a combination of three powerful psychological mechanisms is at work here. This is the moral creditor syndrome. Part of society that hasn't given a single zloty even once to anyone, yes, to the collection for Ukraine, not a single one, has never done any good deed for Ukraine, for Ukrainians. Truly believes we've given you everything, asylum, payments, jobs, and now you dare to just live your lives, but you don't want to die in the trenches for our peace. In short, what's happening is the conversion of hypnotic aid, or rather hypothetical aid, into a complete sense of entitlement to control other people's lives. Well, this is a case for clinical psychiatry. Next comes displaced aggression. The average person accumulates fatigue from economic instability, rising prices, and a general sense of military threat. To direct this fear at the Kremlin or at your own government is pointless, it's frightening. But to find a group of people nearby who have already been declared debtors, you owe us 100 billion, and to direct all your anger at them is psychologically very simple and satisfying. That is, it's a projection of one's own fear, because politicians or ordinary people are terribly afraid that they themselves might have to go to war tomorrow, and to drown out this sticky primal fear, the mind clings to an illusion. So now we've sent all their men out there, every single one of them, and we're sure it won't affect us. This, my friends, is pure magical thinking, wrapped in strict parliamentary suits. Yes, and the politician insists that the idea isn't anti-Ukrainian but rather pro-Polish. Well, let's look at reality. The government is already calling these plans, to put it mildly, unrealistic. Most arrivals have long been working, paying taxes and more. Politicians seeking conservative support are trying to address this. Complex geopolitical and demographic problems are generally being addressed with simple, forceful methods. A classic example is when political expediency tries to force party slogans onto a complex legal and social reality. The forced deportation of people without legal status is a process that's easy to sketch out on Facebook or on paper in a vacuum, but it will inevitably crash against the harsh reality of international law. To be honest, I have my doubts. Is that really how they want to help the front, right? I think it's just pre-election noise and a banal play on collective fears. Of course, we're afraid to fight the Russians if it comes to that. But as for the Ukrainians, well, Ukrainians can handle it without Canada if necessary. Write in the comments, I read everything. Sometimes I don't enjoy it, but sometimes I do. So what else do we have, friends? The news has arrived and we have some very interesting updates about the new EU directive from August 5th. The very ones that link temporary protection with military service obligations are facing harsh realities on the ground. Let's probably start with Romania. By the way, a friend of mine recently got temporary protection in Romania. Hi, Yurka. So, in Romania, a real adventure drama is unfolding. Men who cross the mountains outside of official checkpoints end up in the hands of local officials and hear some incredible stories. They are promised, instead of temporary protection, you will be given full asylum under the standard procedure. And the answers they get vary, from "it all depends on your needs." From "it depends on your individual situation" to "everyone will get asylum." You can travel and work freely across the European Union. In short, friends, that's the reality. It looks like the procedure for granting regular asylum, sorry, I forgot what the term is called. Well, it's generally a long, difficult individual process with a lot of legal restrictions. Being able to work freely across Europe with such a status, well, to put it mildly, won't be possible. In practice, people stay in camps, basically like in a dormitory without their passports because they've been taken away, and they wait for a decision for months. So the situation is that there's a huge influx. The border guards are whispering about 1,500 people in a single day. Well, I think that's an exaggeration. In short, it's a situation where people on the ground are trying to improvise amid a massive influx. Officials are granting provisional approvals just to somehow register and keep the masses of people within the legal framework, while panic requests are being sent up the chain. And what are we supposed to do with all this going forward? So we also have some news from sunny Germany. Here, in the state of North Rhine-Westphalia, where my dear subscriber Sergey Pensioner is watching me from. Sergey, hello. This is where the true strength of German administrative order shows itself. Has the EU decision come into force? It has. But a 50-year-old man from Dnipro calmly goes to the foreigner's office, applies for protection through family reunification, and gets it the same day. No one asks about the military reserve, his border crossing, or military registration, but why? And the interpreter explains simply, there were no instructions from above. And here, friends, is a pure example of how the state apparatus is set up. Yes, Brussels can adopt any directives at all, written on fancy paper with important words, high-profile political decisions. But until a German official receives some kind of circular from the ministry's middle ranks with clear instructions, what document to request, where to put the stamp, which folder to file it in, the official will keep working according to the old instructions. So, as they say, first come, first served. Because for a German employee, violating an EU directive is an abstraction, but violating an internal departmental instruction is a real disciplinary offense. That's why, for now, you can still get temporary protection in Germany from the right people. In short, friends, it's the usual picture of a two-speed European market and administrative chaos. Each country, and even individual regions within countries, interpret the new rules according to their current infrastructure and the officials they have available. In Romania, people are strung along with promises, their passports are taken away, and they sit in camps, while in Germany, statuses are stamped out automatically until new instructions arrive from Berlin. That's how it is. The gears of bureaucracy turn slowly, and while the political center tries to impose a unified standard, the reality on the ground inevitably dictates its own rules. Friends, write in the comments what you think. Will the European Union eventually establish a unified order for all these checks, or will it all drown in the swamp of local interpretations and bureaucratic inertia? Share your opinion in the comments. I'm very curious about what will happen in Poland now that the European Union has extended it, putting Mr. Karl Nawrocki in an awkward spot. Yes, because what can he do? He said, I won't extend anything anymore, and now we'll see. There's going to be some back and forth. Yes, and now we move on to our favorite bit of fresh news from the presidential palace. In August, literally on the 7th, President Nawrocki signed another package of laws. He signed 3 acts at once, and the 4th one, about registry pledges and road traffic, he sent to the Constitutional Tribunal for subsequent review. So now we're going to break down these gears and see where they decided to tighten the screws. Look, there are 4 laws. First, rein in the developers and raise the flag. Let's start with what was signed without reservations. It's a revolution in the real estate market. The law on protecting the rights of home buyers and the Developer Guarantee Fund. In Polish, it's called the Deweloperski Fundusz Gwarancyjny. As you can see, it's very similar. Developers face new restrictions, broader information disclosure, and stricter down payment protections. The attempt to close loopholes and protect citizens' pockets from risky schemes is, of course, a noble cause, but we understand that. As long as the market is linked to the mortgage bubble, officials are just patching holes in the system that caused this chaos. By the way, we'll talk soon. I've got a very interesting video coming up about demographics and mortgages. Next, the maritime fleet under its own flag, a package of benefits for ship owners. The pragmatic goal is to bring ships back from offshore registries under the Polish flag and to give ports and logistics a chance to breathe. Next, we have levies for the KNF. The third law, the Financial Supervision Commission, yes, the KFN. They have regulated the fees from banks and insurers to support this organization. It's a simple fix to the budget mechanism. The regulators need money to more effectively oversee those they regulate. So, and we also have the traditional presidential flip-flop. He signed it and then challenged it. The fourth document, the law on registry pledges and road traffic. It shows us a perfect example of modern legal acrobatics. The president signed the document, which means it comes into force and starts working, but at the same time he sent it to the Constitutional Tribunal. Well, that's not really news. Karl-Andrzej Duda actually was always in sync with the government and signed everything all the time. In fact, I think he only blocked some laws about 4 times. So why is that? There were doubts about the constitutionality of the legal certainty procedure. The law is already in effect, so businesses and citizens must comply, but a possible future annulment by the tribunal still hangs over it like the sword of Damocles. This creates a perfect atmosphere of legal chaos, where there seem to be rules of the game, but at any moment they can turn into a pumpkin. The legislative machine is running at full speed. Here they're tightening the screws on developers. There they're trying to bring capital back to the ports. Elsewhere they're simultaneously creating legal paradoxes, sending freshly signed laws to the judgment of judges. Pardon the tautology. They're trying to hide systemic contradictions with more regulations, but reality is always more complex than what's written on paper. Let's see if the new restrictions will help rein in developers, or if the market will find a loophole again. Write your opinion in the comments. Oh, by the way, friends, I want to say that yes, I have a buddy from Belarus. He bought an apartment, can you imagine? So they already live there, but officially the building hasn't been commissioned yet. The developer is having problems there. There are cases like that, but he's actually lucky. At least you can already live there. And there are some developers where the handover deadline was already in July, it's already August, and there's still nothing there. Nothing suggests that this construction will be finished anytime soon. Well, in short, you can get into trouble. You really can. And who knows how all this will be resolved. All right, I hope that none of my viewers have a new apartment, you know, one that costs a million's lotus, but I sincerely wish that you win the lottery. So that's it for now. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones. Greetings to the working class, and see you next time.